Tell them welcome.
Oh.
Come on. It's your job. It's you.
It's me?
It's you. Come
It's
on.
me?
We
Oh.
want you to feel
Howdy.
welcome. Hi. Listen to her.
Welcome to Studio 23 Nashville. Bryan Cumming, Jennifer Herron here.
And our special guest, Les Kerr.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it'll make
great
you hungry.
singer-songwriter. Oh
Ooh,
yeah.
yeah.
All he thinks about is food. It's great.
Welcome to Studio 23 Nashville with your host Jennifer Herron and Bryan Cumming, and today's very special guest, Les Kerr.
So welcome back to Studio 23 Nashville. Bryan and I, familiar faces, are sitting with this gentleman here, Les Kerr. If you love music, I bet you've heard of this guy. What do you call your music? How do you define it?
Simple. It's hillbilly blues, Caribbean rock and roll.
I didn't hear the word Cajun though. Don't you have spice
Well,
it
there's
up
a little New
sometimes,
Orleans
too?
influence. I'm a Gulf Coast native, and I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and there's a lot of rhythm and blues, some New Orleans influenced music, and some Cajun music. A little bluegrass, a little Caribbean influence, a little rock and roll, and some blues.
Anything you would want, basically, right?
If you play enough different kinds of music, then somebody's bound to like some of it. That's my game plan, you see.
And you two are what? Musical partners, so to speak,
are.
sometimes?
Quite a while. It feels like the very beginning of the Nashville experience was a meeting up with Les. We were put together on a fundraising performance.
It was,
at a
and
coffee house.
Amy Curland at the Bluebird suggested that we get together, and we had never met or rehearsed,
Yeah.
and it worked out beautifully. And Bryan brought his saxophone, I had my guitar, and then we started recording together, and he's been playing with as a member of my Bayou band for many, many years. And
Yeah, it
we've
really has
written
worked out
songs
well.
now and done
Yeah.
different projects like that.
Yeah.
So.
And y'all have had a little bit of success. Some folks that have recorded some of your songwritings together, right?
Well, Les, it was the person who got the assignment to write these commissions songs.
Well, yeah, through a series of circumstances, I was asked to write a city song for Cookeville, Tennessee. And the group that they had already chosen to perform the song was a great bluegrass group called the Cluster Pluckers. And they played our song, and it was released, and they had a really nice big ceremony over there. And it was the sort of the theme song for a long time of Cookeville, Tennessee. And then, as a result of that, we were commissioned to write a song for the University of Mississippi that was part of a $200 million fundraising campaign that ended up with a new school of journalism and a lot of other buildings down there. And that song was performed by the Count Basie Orchestra at a big ceremony on the campus of the university. So it was a real thrill. So,
Very
and
impressive.
then I have recorded some of Bryan's songs like Justine that he wrote because we play them with our band, with the Bayou Band. And then we've written a couple of other ones too.
I feel like more of a Southerner hanging out with Les because he went to Ole Miss and got me a job down in Tupelo.
That's right.
Which is the experience that triggered the inspiration.
Stick
to
with
write
me, kid, I'll
Justine.
make you famous.
Yeah, stick around. Stick around.
He mentions all these things about the Gulf Coast and
Exactly.
the Southern and stuff, and all I can think about, I don't know why, is food.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm thinking,
Well, you
Les,
know,
cook for me sometime.
that's part of it. If it weren't for food, I wouldn't have half the songs I have. I mean, it's a very inspirational and spiritual occupation to do what I do, and especially with the food influences.
Get their mouths watering, right? They're
well,
drooling at the stage.
I have
over
actually, I might be the only songwriter that I know of that's used the word meringue in a song lyric. But it's a little song about a diner in the Mississippi Delta called the Blue and White, and they're famous for their lemon meringue pie. So I said I got to put that in my song.
What's the line?
I've never heard another song. You know, it said, then she said with her southern twang, say room for pie, we got that good meringue. Now,
See, they're
I've never heard another songwriter use that in a song. So I think that might be my only real claim to fame when it's all said and done. I found a way to use
thumbs
meringue.
up.
In a song. Yeah.
Isn't that great? I always like the background story, though. Okay, so we're talking about your music, but you almost, didn't get into music? It was a numbers game for you in the beginning?
I always played music, even when I was in high school, and I had a little rockabilly band called Les Kerr and the Blue Suede Band in Pascagoula, Mississippi.
Elvis
And-
influence there?
Exactly.
Oh,
Big. I was a
okay.
huge Elvis fan, and this was when everybody else was playing Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I just loved Elvis, and so I always played music, and I loved Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. My grandfather was a huge fan of theirs, so I had this rockabilly and bluegrass background. And then my mother had that record that everybody's mother had by Harry Belafonte. And so I had sort of a Caribbean influence too. So anyway, throughout my entire college career, and I majored in journalism and ended up going into broadcast news for about 7 years before I decided that if I was ever going to see if I could make it in music, I better just take the leap, which I did. And I still write a lot of freelance, mainly print articles, and I've been involved in a couple of book projects, including the All-American Truck Stop Cookbook with Ken Beck and Jim Clark, and it was published by Thomas Nelson, which is now part of HarperCollins. And we got recipes from over 200 truck stops from around the country. And in the middle of the recipes, we put stories of trucking life. And I interviewed a waitress that had been on the same job in Mississippi for 31 years. She talked about the time that George Jones and his band stopped at the truck stop. And all the band members got enamored because truck stops now there's a lot of mercantile in truck stops. It's not just a place to eat anymore. So they all fell in love with these leather vests that they had in the store at the truck stop. And they all bought them and they were so excited, and they got back on the bus and they started heading down I-55. It's not too far south of Memphis. And then after they'd gone about 3 minutes, George Jones comes out of the men's room. They had left George Jones
At the truck
in the truck stop. Yes.
The best.
That's right.
Oh,
and
gosh.
and so they had to get on the CB radio back then and call. But I've always thought, if he had not made the show that night, it would have been okay to be no show Jones.
He would've got a legitimate excuse,
So I combined music and when we were writing that book, I'd already moved to Nashville. And what I did to get recipes, I would just eat at truck stops when I was on the road playing my music. That's and I would find the manager and say, we're writing this book, can you contribute some recipes? So I combined music and journalism that way, and we've had a lot of fun with that book. So
this is where the fun begins on Studio 23 Nashville. Les and Bryan are downstairs, and I think somebody's got a guitar strapped on.
She said, can you come to Mardi Gras? It's not too far away. We'll have some people over. They'd love to hear you play. We can have a party in my courtyard and you can sing. Can you plan to come back to New Orleans in the spring? She said, can you come to Carnival for just a day or two? I know how much you love it, and I'd sure love to see you. We can spend some time alone or go to the parades, and you and I can share the best mint juleps ever made. She said, I can take a few days off from work while you are here. Everybody does it around that time of year. We don't have to talk about true love or anything. If only you can come back to New Orleans in the spring. She said, let me check my calendar. Easter's late next year. That makes me glad because it will be warm while you are here. Don't let me talk you into something you don't want to do. But springtime's not the same down here when I'm away from you. She said, I can take a few days off from work while you are here. Everybody does it around that time of year. We don't have to talk about true love or anything. If only you can come back to New Orleans in the spring. I wish you would come back to New Orleans in the spring.
Hickman County, Tennessee. It feels a lot like home, or how home should feel. Come by, sit a spell. Soak in the goodness that inspired Minnie Pearl to write about this special place. Visit Hickman County, Tennessee's hidden treasure. Be the envy of the neighborhood. Make your friends jealous. Be the first on your block to get official swag from Studio 23 Nashville, Pinkerton Productions, and Bryan Cumming. Just visit our store at the bottom of the page and order yours today.
Well, I love stories, and really my songs are based on stories. I don't really write many love songs. I figure there are a lot of people that know a lot more about it than I do, for one thing, and there's so many good ones out there. But the stories that I grew up hearing and really living, I mean, living along the Gulf Coast and up in the northern part of Mississippi during my college years and in Jackson. And then I lived in Mobile, Alabama for a while. And so a lot of that is just kind of the culture that you absorb by living in colorful places. That's really what my songs are about.
You know, I've heard that saying here in Nashville that it all begins with a song.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to somebody just last week and they said, actually, it all begins with a story.
That's about right,
So
yeah.
what you just said is
yeah.
very
The best
interesting.
songs
Yeah.
really are stories.
Yeah.
That's true.
Definitely. You two enjoy working together so much. What is that magic that you like about Les's music so much?
Well, I was able to say it just with the songs. The southernness about. It's funny. I mean, I'm from Georgia, and even as a Georgia, that's deep South. When I came to Tennessee, it felt almost like a bit of Midwest. Even though there are people who speak with a twang, it's north of Georgia, and there's a little more balanced perspective. You know, when you're in a state that is touching I don't know if Georgia's coastal area means anything compared to the Gulf.
Oh, sure it does. I mean, the Atlantic coast of Georgia, I mean, there's a lot of history
Savannah,
over there.
it's deep. It's
Sea Island and all.
Yeah, the swampy Savannah. The word Savannah, you know, kind of says something about the moisture.
Yeah.
And, you know, the funkiness.
That's right. Well, speaking of funky, this man embodies the word funky, and so. What I love about, and to me, growing up as close as I did to New Orleans, there's a lot of rhythm and blues and a lot of the Neville Brothers and people like that. Well, Bryan loves that. We kind of combine that with what we do here,
That's
and
really
there's a great
common ground.
camaraderie there with that love of rhythm and blues. And
you really are kind of like my rhythm and blues outlet. You know, like the Bayou Band. I mean, it started where I would play saxophone with Les, and that was fun.
he was the special
just-
guest back then, and then he became the special guest so often he became a full-time band member. So.
But
I
then it
guess you're one
became
of us.
a band with two horns, and it's really a kind of a distinctly Louisiana approach of tenor sax and baritone sax mostly.
And I never would have, coming out of sort of rockabilly in my high school years, and then I was part of a duo with a partner that I still play with when I go back to Mobile. We would play bluegrass festivals, and he would play the dobro, and I'd play the acoustic guitar. And then I was in a bluegrass band while I was in college at Ole Miss. And so I love this bluegrass and rockabilly, but I would never have thought of a saxophone in my band until I met Bryan. And then when we were together that first time, I thought, this is incredible. We need to do this more often. So,
Well,
and
it
we
really
have
does.
many times over the years.
It just and I grew up loving the songs that came out of Memphis, you know, all that Stax, Otis Redding, Sam and Dave stuff, and it just really feels like part of me. And I moved to Nashville from L.A., where I had played in an R&B band, and Billy and the Beaters with four horns, and so it's really a kind of a mixing of a lot of the things that are just in me. You know,
And
as a Southerner.
Bryan was one of the first people I met that knew the song by Billy and the Beaters, "Millie Makes 'Em Chilly." Now it's
Another
got
food
food, it's
song.
got
Yeah,
food,
it
and it's
sure
got
is.
rhythm.
It's
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's
Definitely
kind of
a
an old
theme.
Elvis groove.
Yes, exactly, and that's one reason I love that song too.
You know, y'all picked a little bit together for us, but the stage thing, to see all this energy you're talking about and that actual chemistry, it's a yearly event, and this is the big event in Nashville as far as Mardi Gras is
Mardi Gras?
concerned.
We
That, you own it.
we have
He
done
does,
it.
yeah.
We've done it since 1992. We celebrated our 26th one in 2017, and the Bluebird has been wonderful. And the way it all started is when I moved here, I realized there was not a lot of Mardi Gras activity. At least I didn't see it in Nashville. So I went to Amy Curland, who owned the Bluebird then, and said, what if we gave it a try? And she said, well, we'll see how it goes. And here we are, this many years later, and I'm so proud. And the Bluebird has been wonderful to me over the years. It's been a great relationship. But our Bluebird Cafe Mardi Gras show, we squeeze all 8 members of our Bayou Band on that little stage and have a big time. We get to know each other pretty well and have a lot of fun. But we
And
have
you even
beads.
turned it
and-
into a Mardi. Yeah, the beads and the
moon pies.
Yeah,
Moon pies. We have moon pies at our show on Mardi Gras because that's a tradition in Mobile, Alabama at Mardi Gras. Mobile is where Mardi Gras was begun in this country years before it got to New Orleans. But moon pies are a major part of Mobile's Mardi Gras, and the reason is from the floats they used to throw boxes of Cracker Jacks. Well, they thought that's too dangerous. We need something nice and soft because people could get hit by the boxes, you know.
Right.
So
Marshmallows are soft.
they came up with moon pies, and what happens is at the beginning of the parade everything is fine, and they're throwing the individual moon pies and everybody's happy. Well, you know, they drink as the floats go on. The people on the floats, you know, imbibe, and by the end of the parade they're throwing boxes of moon pies off. So I'm not really sure if it solves the problem, but it's a tradition. So we always have moon pies at our Mardi Gras show here, although we don't go as far as the people on those floats do. We actually give people the individual moon pies.
You're watching Studio 23 Nashville. Thank our sponsors by clicking on their links at the side and bottom of the screen. Let us know what you think. That's studio23nashville@gmail.com or online at facebook.com/studio23nashville.
It is a pleasure to be here with Les Kerr. Les and I have been working together a long time. We go way back.
I think 1992.
Yeah,
was
and
the,
I've
first
enjoyed it
time.
all.
Me too.
One of my favorite moments I remember from years ago is the humor that I found in that song about when you went to the Caribbean island and black socks in your
Tourist in a rental car.
Tourist in a rental
Yeah.
car. That's one of the funniest songs I've ever
Well, Jim
heard.
Sparks and I wrote that together, and we had a lot of fun with it.
And so I think this song that we're about to do is a little bit in that flavor. It has a kind of
It is.
ocean.
The
beachy-
story of this one actually predates that one. I went to Nassau, the Bahamas in 1994. I'm sorry, 1984, even further back than
Yes,
that.
I remember that.
And so I went by myself just to see, just to take a little weekend trip. I was living on the Gulf Coast, and it seemed like the nice thing to do. And so along Bay Street in Nassau, there are a lot of these street vendors, and they'll come up to you and make these offers. And there's an actual market there too, but occasionally they'll go rogue and go independent. So this little boy came up to me and started pitching me on different things that he could offer me that I did not take, by the way, I want you to know. But anyways, that idea has stuck with me all those years, and so this song came from there.
Could you get a Cuban cigar?
I didn't, but they probably were available.
Okay, what were the items they were selling? Things made
Well,
out of
it's all in the
conch shells?
song.
Oh,
It's all in the
Let's
song.
do the song. then.
Okay.
Hustling on Bay Street.
That's right.
Okay.
A small boy spots me in the crowd of tourists shuffling slow and loud. Sir, I see you're smarter than most of these Americans. Hey, mister, where you from? You want to buy some coconut rum? I know a girl who drinks it too, and I can fix her up with you. Hustling on Bay Street, anytime, night or day street. It's yours if you can pay street. Hustling on Bay Street. Locals barter on the streets, things you never thought you'd need. Grass skirts, maracas, hats of straw, some things just outside the law. Hustling on Bay Street, anytime, night or day street. It's yours if you can pay street. Hustling on Bay Street. I'm here to get away from my old day today, but some things are just the same. The currency is all that's changed. Back home it's hustling on Wall Street. Trust your brokers, Call Street. You could lose it all, Street. Hustling on Wall Street. I think I'll take hustling on Bay Street. Anytime, night or day, Street. It's yours if you can pay, Street. Hustling on Bay Street. Hustling on Bay Street, yeah. Hustling on Bay Street.
All right. Well, we're back here with Les Kerr, and I want to talk a little bit about Southerners and Irishmen. This is a song that talks about that sentimentality, that longing for home.
It's dear to my heart.
It is, it is. I think my favorite line is the one about the woman who goes to New York and hears the phrase, "My mama's black-eyed peas," and it just brings her to her knees.
That's right. Well, I think most Southerners can relate to that. If you're far away and you run into somebody else from the South, for instance,
Yeah.
you always have to stop and talk, and you will eventually know the same people. That's the way life works. You know, they say Mississippi is one big small town, and the whole state. And if you're from there, it doesn't take you too long to know somebody else that's from there, and so those conversations get started. But that song, you know, it's been one that I've enjoyed playing because you know, it speaks to a lot of people, whether they're from the South or whether they're Irish or not. And I've learned, as I've played it around different places in the country, people that have no connection to the South really seem to like that song. And I think it brings them home from wherever they may be. And so that's probably the appeal of it.
Did you consider mentioning grits in that song?
No, I didn't want to make it a laundry list of everything Southern. You know, some songs get like that, and I feel like I made my points when I needed to. And
well, something that we started with was talking about the Gulf Coast and,
Right.
and some of the foods and the flavors that are characteristic of that, and you're very familiar with it.
Well, and there are a lot of Irish people along the Gulf Coast. People don't realize that. In fact, there's the Irish Channel in New Orleans and also Irish Bayou, a little fishing community. As you go in, if you're coming in from the east on Interstate 10, right before you get to Lake Pontchartrain, there is Irish Bayou. So, and that's why in New Orleans there's a famous place called Pat O'Brien's. I mean, there are a lot, and in Biloxi, there's a wonderful restaurant. Everything leads me to a restaurant. There's a wonderful restaurant called Mary Mahoney's, and so there are a lot of Irish connections along the Gulf Coast that are very strong. So when I was growing up down there, I heard a lot of this, and I started playing St. Patrick's Day somewhere in 1983. I started back at the Mobile Yacht Club, and I have played St. Patrick's Day every year with the exception of 2 or 3 since 1983. And you've been a part of most of them here in Nashville at Jimmy Kelly's. But over the years, I've played St. Patrick's Days in Shreveport, Louisiana, Fairhope, Alabama, Mobile, Memphis. I did several in Memphis. And so I approached Mike Kelly at Jimmy Kelly's one time, and I said, I'd sure like to spend the night in my own bed on St. Patrick's Day. And so well, let's give it a try. And here we are. We started doing that about 23 years ago, I think. So, but I love the music. You know, I just love. You mentioned the hillbilly blues, Caribbean rock and roll. I just love all kinds of music. And when I was in college, I got enamored with Bing Crosby's 1940s Irish recordings, and they were pretty much Irish American. You know, I'll Take You Home, Kathleen, I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, and songs like that. But as you grow into, I mean, the folk type Irish songs like Patty Works on the Railroad and Molly Malone and some of those, it's really interesting music, and I think that's what draws me to it initially. But I've always enjoyed those songs.
And one other that I never knew of before is the Johnny Cash song, 40 Shades
40
of Green.
Shades of Green, yeah.
Have you ever heard of that?
That was on an
that was
album, or
beautiful.
actually he wrote it and it was a single, I think, in the early 1960s. It came out around the time that Ring of Fire did. And it's become kind of an Irish standard. A lot of Irish tenors sing it today. You know, Daniel O'Donnell and people like that, they always include that in their shows. But it's called 40 Shades of Green, and it's a beautifully written song.
I had no idea that there was such a rich history.
I never knew
Yeah.
that Johnny Cash's writing was that big.
Yeah, with my music, I can bore you to death with all kind of facts that you never thought you'd want to know. But it's really what got me into music and what has kept me there. You know, I love the different styles, and you know, in New Orleans itself, people think of New Orleans as Cajun, but it's really much more jazz and rhythm and blues oriented, and there's Cajun influence. But the city of New Orleans itself is not necessarily a Cajun city, but Louisiana it certainly is. So there's all kind of folks all up and down the Gulf Coast of different backgrounds. And
So do you pretty much keep your music here in Nashville? Are you based here or you tour around?
luckily, I can play a lot regionally, and I really like that, frankly. But I do tour. Mainly when I tour, it's always either as a solo or with a duo with a partner of mine who lives in Mobile, Alabama, Spanish Fort across the bay. And he and I have been playing together since we both lived there. He's come up here to record with me. In fact, we've recorded in Bryan's studio. Danny McCann is his name, and plays the dobro, and just a wonderful musician, great harmony vocalist as well. But when I play on the Gulf Coast, he usually plays with me. Although usually when I go to New Orleans, I'm by myself, and there's a great place called the Maple Leaf Bar. And the way that I got started playing there was a poet named Everett Maddox who started a weekly poetry reading on Sunday afternoons at the Maple Leaf Bar. And he would hold court. People would come just to watch him read. And he and I met through a mutual friend, and he had a real appreciation for songwriters. So he would ask me to come and play my songs at his poetry readings because I was writing songs by then. Well, he ended up passing away in the late 80s, but the person that hosts those sessions now is named Nancy Harris, and she's very nice to have me back every now and then to do the same thing. So anyway, that's another colorful person. Everett, his first published poem was in the New Yorker. I mean, the first time he was ever published was in the New Yorker magazine. And he became a professor and taught at different universities and ended up in New Orleans. He was from Prattville, Alabama originally. And as time went on, he fell on hard times, but no matter what his situation was, he would always do these poetry readings on Sunday afternoon. And he'd written several books, and he would always write me. I wrote a blog about this. He would write me on postcards from the Maple Leaf, because that's really where he would get his mail. But towards the end of his life, he was getting his mail there. He was sleeping there, just kind of living in the Maple Leaf Bar. But he would always do his poetry readings wearing a suit, and he had this incredible command of the English language. And so I got to know people like that down there. And that you were talking about, where the songs come from. If you meet people like that, you cannot help but write a song.
These are those characters. Like
Yeah.
you would hear songwriters like Hank Williams talk about those characters that he had met in his life, and
Well,
they were the basis of these different songs.
A little bit of the song that I wrote about him is called Inspiration in Bar Scotch. And it goes, on that bar stool toward the right, at the Maple Leaf each night, he quoted Twain and Shakespeare verbatim as we watched New Orleans royalty, the king of irony, 80 proof poetry, inspiration and bar scotch.
Beautiful
And
the way
thank
marry
you.
those words.
Well, thank you. Well, he was a great inspiration to me he could find the most clever phrase to order a drink or do anything. Everything he did was just with a flair. And I've always appreciated that about people. That's why I like Bryan so much.
Yeah.
He's got the market cornered on energy, I'll tell you that.
Well, I had never heard of Everett Maddox until Les brought this song in, and I was drawn in. It's a total world. I feel like I'm at the Maple Leaf
Yes,
Bar.
and that's what I was going to say. You have done radio before, and radio is called the theater of the imagination. And when I listen to your lyrics, I can totally envision exactly what you're singing about
Well,
or
thank you.
talking about. I have this picture of that man already in my head.
Well, thank you. Part of it may be my journalism background. Beyond what I did in radio was news. They wouldn't let me near the records. And that was back in the days when we had news departments, and I covered everything from fires to city commission meetings to presidents who would come to the area. And so, thank you. I've tried to incorporate those skills into my songwriting, because like I say, I don't write the love songs that other people do just because I'm not drawn to write them. I have been in love in my life, of course, but I think other people express those feelings better than I do. I'm better at it one-on-one than I am trying to write a song about it.
I'm glad you said that about journalism, though, because the essential lesson is cover the facts, the what, when, where, why, how. That's the first lesson. What you put in the lead paragraph is loaded with those very concrete details.
Well, and try to make it interesting too. Try to make it in a way that is unusual, that people will not hear all the time, because songs can be so similar, and my goal is to try to be a little different. So and the subject matter itself lends itself to being different, like somebody like Everett Maddox. It was easy to write. although I say it was easy writing, it took me about 20 years to get it right. You know, sometimes songwriters have their ways, and I'd started writing that song, just like the song Hustling on Bay Street. I really began that song about 20 years before I finished it.
Really?
Well,
Wow.
you know, you just want it to be right. And I would,
Tweaking?
yeah, and pick, and just thinking the chorus, and then the chorus, do I have enough other material to support that chorus? And you sort of write backwards at that point, you know, and say, all right, what do I need to say? And I don't want to be trite, so I try to make it where it's not just like we're talking about a laundry list of things that you can stick in a song about because it's about a certain subject. You try to make them a little more interesting and more descriptive. Illustrating, I think, is a key factor in the way I write. I try to illustrate as much as I can.
Whether it's journalism or songwriting, it's writing and picking those details and forming the structure of it, a story that's printed in a paper or recited on a broadcast, or a song that's on the radio. They're very similar, aesthetic principles.
So,
I'm telling you, you're a master at it, definitely.
Well, thank you.
Thank goodness those numbers didn't work out for you.
That's right.
The whole accounting game that you considered at one point.
well, I became a journalist because I flunked out of accounting, but I had to make a living doing something, so therefore, and I loved, and really the stories growing up in the South, and other places too, of course, but I was just, my grandfather retired and lived with us after he retired for about 8 or 9 years, and hearing him tell stories of his childhood in sort of central Mississippi and then later on as a railroad man in Tennessee, I learned to appreciate, the art of storytelling from him and other people that I knew.
Yeah, that's a lost art. It sure is, right? I guess with the grandparents'
Right.
generation or great-grandparents, people don't tell those stories or sit down and share like they used to.
It reminds me of another Les Kerr song. Is it the one with Shannon about shake a hand? Or
It's called Have a Handshake. And Shannon Williford, when I was a small child and lived in Jackson, Mississippi, I was a member of the First Presbyterian Church. And Shannon also, who lives here in Nashville and is a band leader himself, he and I have been friends ever since then because we were both in that church together. And his grandfather his name was Coot Williford. And nobody really knows how he got the nickname Coot, but he was Coot Williford. And Coot's wife was named Sister Baby. Now that's spelled S-U-S-T-U-T-A-H, Sister Baby. And she went by that name until she died in her 70s. She was an old woman. People still called her Sister Baby. But Coot and Sister Baby were very colorful people. And Coot was that person that when you go to church, he's there before everybody else is. How that happens, nobody knew. But he was the one that shook everybody's hand and said hello, good morning, isn't it a beautiful day? And Shannon and I were talking about that one day, and Shannon said he would say, beautiful day, isn't it? Even if it was pouring down rain. And I remember him as a small child because he's the one that taught me how to shake somebody's hand. And it was really a moving moment. My daddy had passed away by that time, and Coot would see me every morning. My mother would bring me to Sunday school and all that. So Shannon and I thought we need to write a song about his grandfather, so we did. And that's where that came about.
Have a handshake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt, inspired by that.
Well,
I could see Coot, and I could feel that handshake and feel the impartation.
So I think the characters that you meet, and they still exist. It's not like it's something that happened in the old South years ago. Everywhere you go, you can meet interesting people.
If you pay attention.
You really do. You really do. And if you spend more time listening than talking, sometimes you can hear some interesting phrases.
Charlie Pride, the Grand Ole Opry star, once told me, he said, if you will just sit somewhere for 5-10 minutes and stare, you can learn so much.
Oh, yeah.
He loves that. He loves to study people and listen, and he prides himself, so to speak, sorry for the pun, on figuring out people or even, what your sign is.
Well, he has such a knack of choosing great songs, too. Like, one of my favorites of his, naturally, would be the Mississippi Cotton Picking Delta Town. But even, is anybody going to San Antonio? I mean, the descriptions that he can so convincingly tells you what he's trying to say. I think that he's a great singer, and he has a real knack for choosing songs that are really descriptive.
Yeah, but he's just like you, finding those characters or studying people. I find that interesting.
Maybe it's a Mississippi thing. He's from Sledge.
I'm telling you. I've got a lot of famous people from Mississippi in music.
Well,
the list could go on and on and on and on.
I've had the opportunity to do a couple of charity events with Mac McAnally, who is the songwriter's songwriter. He's and he's such a gentleman too, just a very nice fellow. And does he bring you in with characters in his songs too. So I enjoy that heritage.
Beautiful.
Straighten up and find a right.
Now available, Come Out Swingin', the new CD by the Bryan Cumming Jazz Quartet. Come Out Swingin' is available at Studio23Nashville.com and all major digital retailers.
Sing, come out swinging.
Come Out Swingin' by the Bryan Cumming Jazz Quartet. Get yours today.
Les, I think of you as a Southerner and a songwriter. And there's one song of yours that really tells the story.
Well, thank you. I am a Southerner. I grew up in Mississippi on the Gulf Coast and in Jackson, and part of Mississippi at large, basically. But growing up down there, I heard a lot of great stories, and that's really where my songwriting comes from, is telling stories. And I was down on the Gulf Coast after I had moved to Nashville, and when I used to go down there, before you could buy coffee with chicory here in the Middle Tennessee area, I would stock up and bring it back from these grocery stores all along Mobile and Pascagoula and New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so I was driving back from Destin, Florida, where I'd played, and I'd stop by Mobile and all these other places along the way, and I had a trunk full of coffee with chicory.
Did you
And
stop at different places because they had a limit how many
well,
cans you could buy?
I just went, when I'd see some, I'd pick it up. That's the way
Yeah.
I am. So
Yeah.
anyway, and I thought, well, this is interesting coming back with all this coffee, and I got to thinking about it brings me home when I drink coffee with chicory in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd heard an NPR story about how people from the American South and people from Ireland are most prone to be the most nostalgic when they're far away from home, and more often not likely to go back. So all these thoughts were rummaging in my head, and as I was leaving Destin, I drove up, all the way back to Nashville, and I got the idea for the song, and I stopped at a convenience store and bought a pad, and I'd drive a while, think of a verse, and stop and write. Drive a while, think of a verse, and stop and write.
Yeah.
So the story of the song sort of evolved as I came north from the Gulf Coast back to Nashville. So
I love the way you put food images into the song with the coffee too.
sure.
But it's not just food, but sometimes just the phrase, the mention of the food
Yeah.
is enough to really trigger those.
Well,
sentimental-
food's very important to the culture of the South and
It really
to
is.
Ireland too. So
Yeah.
I grew up, absorbing all of that,
Yeah, and it shows up.
physically and literally too.
Well, let's
figuratively,
do
literally.
the song, Southerners and Irishmen.
Southerners and Irishmen always long for home, no matter how far they're away or how long they've been gone. The little things that take them there for moments at a time are elevated to a place that's sacred in their minds. To hear a fiddle play a piece of some old Irish reel can cause a man from County Cork to genuflect and kneel. A Georgia lady in New York might fall down on her knees if someone merely speaks the words, "My mama's black-eyed peas." Show a cotton bowl to a Mississippi sun, or talk about the bluegrass with an old Kentuckian. Find a displaced Dubliner and sing, "Oh Danny boy," and smiling eyes will soon be filled with grateful tears of joy. I do my best to keep a taste of home right close at hand. I guard coffee with chicory like smuggler's contraband. Be it Irish whiskey or fried chicken with green beans, Southerners and Irishmen are brought home by such things. Southerners and Irishmen always long for home, no matter how far they're away or how long they've been gone. Others have a sense of sight, of hearing, touch, and taste, but Southerners and Irishmen are blessed with sense of place. Southerners and Irishmen always long for home.
Welcome back to Studio 23 Nashville, and I am holding one of the best CDs out there right now, Les Kerr, Bay Street. It was actually produced by yourself, Bryan, right?
Exactly.
Studio 23
Yes.
with Les. Yes.
I've been recording with Bryan since 1992, and that is album number 10, by the way. I don't know if you know that. We've got 10 behind us now.
2 digits.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
And a lot of the instrumentation was Bryan?
He did a lot. He played the mandolin and the saxophone and
Your
bass.
one-stop shop.
That's right. That's right.
I love it.
And he does the same thing on stage when we play together. He'll, one time when we did a Christmas album, I did a spoken word rendition of Yes, Virginia, There is a Santa Claus. So I had written this little melody for it, and I did it, and Bryan had a classical guitar, so I borrowed the classical guitar to play it. I thought, it needs something else. And he said, just a minute, and I heard him rummaging around back there. He came out with a cello, and I had no earthly idea he played the cello. So, he's a multi-talented fella. He's,
Okay, I'm seeing him like with a big trunk on stage. And you're just like throwing stuff over
That's
your
right.
shoulder. What
So-
can we find in here?
So for that record, you played the cello on it.
Well, that's another good example too of your journalism background, because I learned so much about the origin of the Yes, Virginia. You know that phrase, Yes, Virginia,
Yes.
there's a Santa Claus. Well, it was published in a newspaper,
1897. Yeah.
And so there was an actual letter that a little girl named Virginia had written to the editor of that paper.
It was the New York Sun. And,
Okay, well,
and,
you know the
and,
story.
well, Yes, Virginia is the reply. Well, do you remember Bryan also, to do that track, Bryan took his recording equipment downtown to Nashville, and Eddie Jones had been the editor of the Nashville Banner, which was out of business by the time we did this record. But Eddie, I knew him, and he typed Hunt and Peck style on an old manual typewriter. And I wanted to get that sound as we began the answer to Yes, Virginia, to Virginia O'Hanlon's question. It starts with the editor, and so Bryan took his equipment downtown to get Eddie
recorded an
Jones.
acoustic
That's right, the
typewriter.
acoustic typewriter.
To simulate
how
the.
great.
And to make that even more meaningful to me, we got the little girl to play Virginia, who wrote, and she read the part that was printed in the letter of the New York Sun in 1897, Virginia O'Hanlon, and Caroline Stoker, who is Brent Stoker's daughter, and Brent plays with us a lot.
Gordon Stoker's granddaughter?
Gordon Stoker's
From
the
granddaughter.
Jordanaires?
So
Yes.
on that particular album, I had Gordon Stoker, because the Jordanaires did several songs with us, and then Brent Stoker, his son, Gordon's son, played. He and I played together a lot. He played on the record, and we had Caroline. So I had 3 generations of Stokers
Oh, wow.
on that one album. So I'm real proud of that. But anyway, getting back to Bryan, he can record, he can play, he can entertain.
I can host.
High
You and
value.
I.
Exactly, and,
Yes, here we go.
And now he's a
Let's go.
broadcasting mogul, and I love that about him.
With a small M.
You're growing by
Yeah,
leaps
yeah.
and bounds
Oh,
daily.
it's so glad to be here. Thanks, Les, for
That's my
bringing it
pleasure.
full circle.
And where do we
10
get
albums.
this?
That you can find that on leskerr.com and just about any outlet like iTunes, Amazon. It's all over the place. So don't be shy. You'll find it somewhere. I got a CD order the other day from Germany. It's amazing how the music gets out there, and it's a wonderful thing that the internet has provided musicians. It's a great outlet to get to spread the word.
Definitely. And we've got to give a photo credit to Les on this CD.
Oh, yeah, there's a story there.
You have the most amazing picture on the back there.
This is a pelican in flight. And last year, in 2016, I was in Mobile, Alabama performing. And I love going down there because I lived there for about 7 years. And I was spending the weekend with my friend Danny McCann and his wife. And Danny lives in Spanish Fort. Well, we went down to Fairhope, which is on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay, where there's a great municipal pier, just to take some pictures. And Danny took the one on the front, the actual shot of me. That Danny took that with my iPhone.
Hey, that would be a great selfie if you take this one.
Well, that's right. Well, Danny took that.
Okay.
So there was a pelican sitting at the end of the pier. And I knew that the album was going to be called Bay Street, and it was going to have kind of a nautical coastal feel to it. So I thought that would be a great picture for the album. And I started heading towards the pelican with my iPhone, and I got as close as I could get, and all of a sudden I spooked him. And instead of staying on the post, he flew right towards me. And I just lifted up my iPhone and took that picture. And I couldn't have paid that pelican $1 million to do that. He did me a great favor by jumping the gun. So that was kind of fun too. I love the stories that go with the albums as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting. And that's Les Kerr, LESKERR.com. So check it out. Your tour is there
Yes,
posted
the
as well.
tour
Yeah.
schedule's on there too. So,
All right.
Hillbilly Blues, Caribbean rock and roll.
and there's some videos and other things that you can see on the website as well. Links to some of the magazine articles that I've written that are online where people can read. So, anyway, but thank you very
Great
much
to
for
have
thank you
you.
so
Oh,
much
thank
for
you.
having me
Stopping
on.
by.
It's always a pleasure to be with both of you.
Oh, it's so fun to sit here and visit with you and listen to your music. Yeah.
You feel more
you.
southern?
Yes. I'm still hungry though.
Well, I'm sure there's a way to go for
We'll
that.
boil us up some shrimp before too long.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks so much, Liz.